Welcome to another episode of Us Creative Types, the podcast that examines creativity through conversations with the people behind the work, exploring milestones in their lives and what they learned along the way. I'm your host, Scott Littroff. There are conversations with great creative artists that leave you feeling uplifted, where the wisdom, humanity, and positivity of that person hit straight to the heart. My guest today is one such person, an extraordinarily accomplished vocalist, music director, conductor, and educator who, through his boundless compassion and enthusiasm, has touched the lives of musicians and performers of all ages and continues to do so today. His love for music, acting, and theater began in childhood, discovering early on the importance of artistic community, finding, as he describes it, his people. His story is one of perseverance, of being true to oneself, and of being guided by the unshakable belief that emotional and artistic honesty can carry you through life's challenges. And on a personal note, I'm proud to say he's a good friend and a professional colleague. This episode begins with an excerpt from an archived performance in which he beautifully sings "Where is the Life That Late I Led?" from the classic Cole Porter musical Kiss Me, Kate, performed with the Oregon Symphony Pops. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, I highly recommend you also check out the YouTube version where I posted the video excerpt as well. It's truly my pleasure to share with you my conversation with Steven Dahlke.
Where is the life that late I led? Where is it now? Totally dead. Where is the fun I used to find? Where is it gone? Gone with the wind. I've often been told of nuptial bliss, but what can you do at 1:45 with only a shrew to kiss? So I repeat what first I said, where's the life that led?
Steven Dahlke, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to see you, and we do see each other on a regular basis. So for those who don't know this, we are colleagues at Queensborough Community College as well.
It feels very important to be here. I was thinking about this when we were getting ready. For someone to say, just talk about what you think, that's very, very rare. And I'm trying to think of the times in life when that happens. One time as a job interview. Mm-hmm. But then everything you're saying is this the right thing? Is this checking off a box, And so there's a negative outcome that could happen there. Or if you're at a rehearsal where you're an actor or a participant, but not the leader, then one might be afraid that they're going to get something wrong and be corrected. And then if you're at a rehearsal where you're the leader, then you're thinking, am I giving information in an interesting way? Am I being critical enough? You probably feel this as a professor. You want to make sure you're not letting something slide.
Oh, sure. And I'm an overthinker too. I'm certainly an overthinker in probably all aspects of my life, but certainly my professional and artistic lives. And it sounds it sounds like you're a kindred spirit in that regard.
100%. So here we are now, and you were saying, tell me what you think. And then to have none of that negative outcome possibility there, it's an extraordinary feeling. When I got out of my car making to come here today, it was like getting ready to go to a new therapist. It's like, okay, here's their office.
Oh, I'm honored. Let's see if you want your money back afterwards.
you know what because you're thinking this is a situation that's going to be very intimate.
Oh, of course, right. Talking about yourself, talking about your creative trajectory for people who maybe are not in the creative arts. Mm-hmm. It might be a bit different to understand that you have a passion that developed in you organically. And at some point in your life, you made the decision, this is going to be how I will put food on the table. But even more than that, you still define yourself in some ways, in many ways, through that passion. That doesn't change. It evolves. It becomes a different role in your life. But to be a creative person and to make that commitment, it can be scary because now you're taking something that was purely for enjoyment and in some ways marketing that because you are the product as a creative type. But it's also exciting and it's everything in between. So that's what this is all about, is let's have a forum where we talk about that. Let's bring people to express maybe parts of what they don't express in their bio, because that's not what you tell someone when you want a job. You don't tell them, wow, my imposter syndrome has really been getting me the past 5 years, but it's also been something that helped me to check myself at the times when I needed to work harder, or anything like that. They're very important. They're very human, but we don't often talk about that. So that's what I'm hoping this can be for everyone.
I love stuff like what you just did. There's something so cool about someone putting into words something that you feel and you never heard it put that way before. I love that. In class, whenever that happens, I love the moment when I'm able to say, oh, I would never have thought of that. I love that you put it that way. That's there's nothing better than being heard. And it's interesting, I'm sure later we'll talk about it. There is nothing better than someone putting into their own words what they heard you say. That's a special kind of validation.
Oh, sure.
You know?
Sure. Yeah.
You felt that? You felt when someone says, oh, I think this is what you're saying. And how wonderful that feels when someone does that.
Well, it's hard to communicate your ideas, especially something as complicated as, for people who don't already know, I really would like to give the full rundown of who you are professionally, which is to say that you are a polymath in so many ways. You are a vocalist, a very talented vocalist at that. You are a music director. You have theater experience not only in the musical setting, but also as an actor. And you are also an educator, a full-time educator as well. And so that's many hats to wear. And I want to know about all of it. I want to know how you got there. I want to know what happened along the way and what made you feel like this is where I'm going and this is the path, because these are the ideas that we don't often get to share with each other as professionals, as fellow creative types, but also with other people.
Yeah. When I was like 12 years old, my grandma on my dad's side, she said, I signed you up for theater classes. And I'm from Portland, Oregon originally. So it was called the Portland Civic Theater. And she told me that she had signed me up for that. And I thought, what? Okay, what's that all about? But it's such a lovely thing to be able to say, because she actually saw in her little grandson somebody who throve. I wonder if that's how you say it. Thrived on.
You heard it first here, folks.
I love going down that sort of thing. Have thriven. We ought to look that up.
Mm-hmm. I like throve, though. I'm going to keep that.
Isn't that something? She, I think, saw in her grandson a kid who felt best when he was being expressive. And I think being expressive physically, she saw. What a fabulous thing to be able to tell you that. My grandma, because she was someone who would not have been able to say, Steven, how are you today? I want to know what's in your heart. Can you let me know, honey? And then if I had said something, I can see how you feel that way. I felt that way too. Tell me more. I don't think that was in her wheelhouse to be able to talk like that.
Did you feel like, is that like a generational thing? Like people maybe just didn't open up in that way? Or do you think that maybe that was just not her way?
Both. Can you believe she was born in 1896? How do you like that?
1896.
So a generational thing, yes, but that side of the family really is a side of the family that makes a little bit like they're more British. Like they would say, sending love rather than I love you.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Anyway, so she was not able to say, I don't think, I have a great deal of respect for her, even though she's long dead, and I hardly knew her, just because that's the way she kind of was. But still did one of the kindest things that anyone in the world ever did, which was, I see you, and so I'm going to help you to do something. When I went to class that first day, it was scary because I was in 7th grade, I guess. Yeah, the fall of my 7th grade year. So everybody was taller than me, so it was something to see all these bigger people. And there I was just thrown in. But everybody was silly and spontaneous and physical and rewarded for being that way. And I just thought, this computes. This is my people. So that's the first step in a journey of I want to be expressive, and I want to make it that is the way I go through life, and I want to make it that's the way I, as you said, put food on the table.
Right.
That was the first big step, and what a fabulous thing to be able to talk about that world at that civic theater.
Your grandmother must have seen in you an affinity for engaging in that kind of expression in some way? Did you ever show, oh, I like to watch this kind of media, or were you singing around the house? Were you like me? Like when I was a kid, I was playing on a Casio keyboard before I ever had an instrument. Like, what was that spark for you that led others to believe that you had an affinity for creativity?
I wonder if she noticed what I watched on TV. I know whenever we would go to the nursing home, I don't like to say that because it sounds negative, but that's what my mom said, nursing home. So it's just where she was because she needed to be looked after. I would always go through the TV guide, and maybe she noticed that to see what old MGM movies would be on. And I would always take note of the year. And so maybe she noticed that if it was in the early 40s or the late 30s, that I would be more interested than if it was something else. And maybe I wanted, clock when that was, so I'd watch it when it came on. And if ever there was a movie with Judy Garland, I don't know how gay that sounds, but what are you going to do? But whenever something with her, I'd want to see. And in those days, Wizard of Oz came on once a year. Okay. And so if you love that show, you saw it once. And right around when Easter time was coming around, I think because that's when it was on, I would always, every Sunday when we go to her place, I would look to see, is Wizard of Oz coming up this next week? Because I got to be ready for that. So she may have noticed the things I like to watch. And then she may have noticed how much my sister and I loved putting like the square cushions that you would find on the couch, putting them on the floor and making like those were our little performance podiums, or like where Karen Carpenter would sit. She'd have one. And I would always be Karen Carpenter. And then my sister would probably be the drummer. God knows that's a whole other thing. But anyway, she noticed that we would turn on the Carpenters and sing along. Maybe she saw something like that. So I bet she and others probably saw, this is a guy who likes to play act. That's a funny thing because my mom, maybe my other grandma, might have said that as a negative.
Okay.
Like, oh, you guys are play acting. My sister Lane and I love to make like we had a house and we were a little family. So people probably saw that and thought, okay, what are we going to do here? Maybe put him in theater class and that'll curb whatever that is.
I'm sure there are exceptions, but at least from my experience, most of the creative people that I speak to and that we have an opportunity to talk about formative years, there's always someone who was that supportive spark. There's always one person, either as a family member or a friend or someone they looked up to that supported that.
That was my sister.
That was your sister.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. She's alive and well. So I don't want to talk to her about in a way that sounds as if she is no longer with us, even though I love her so much that you never forget how important it is that she's still around. But she was like, yeah, let's play that. And sure, I'll be Murray. You can be Mary when we play Mary Tyler Moore. Or sometimes she was Rhoda. But she never minded being a supporting character. She never said, well, Steven, why don't you be Mr. Grant? Isn't that what a boy is supposed to be? So when you say that, it makes me think that that's a one special person who said, you just be whatever you want to be. And that is a sweet, sweet thing.
That's so special. What age difference between you and your sister?
She was born 67. I'm born 64, so 3 years younger than me.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, real close.
Very much same generation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that person, that supportive person was growing up right there with you. That's special.
Isn't that the best?
Isn't that?
I
have one sibling. I have an older brother.
Real close?
We were.
Any age?
Well, we still are. That part doesn't change.
I guess you're right. He's still the same amount. So you were side by side, like me and my sister. When
3 years. 3 years.
Right, there you have it.
Yeah.
Boy, what a precious. Right, because you're popped out when you're born. Mm-hmm. What? Who are these people? Right, and adults sometimes, I'm sure, are not able to say, here's the world, honey.
So you have a teammate to walk through all of that with.
Right, that's a sweet way of putting that. Yeah. So that's all that play, and I just love domestic things. I mean, rearranging the furniture for a little house and making like the plants in our yard were different apartment buildings or something. And
so then you were in this, I'm sorry, was it a theater program?
Yeah, it was a school. So it's called Portland Civic Theater School.
Okay.
And we went every Saturday from 9:30 until 2. And we had a acting class, I guess at the beginning that was. I think it was around an hour and a half. And then we had a little break. And then we had a movement class and then a speech class. And that was it. And I did that from like 7th grade through high school.
Okay. Now, at what point did you make that leap? Because there's always that decision. At one point, a creative person can go several ways. They can keep creativity in their lives, and many people do, right? There are creative types who don't necessarily go into that as a profession, but there's a decision, something that happens that pulls us in and says, okay, I'm going to stick with this. This is my path. At what point did it cease to be just for enjoyment and, okay, this is my determination to move forward with this? Because, of course, you have a great deal of formal training, a great deal of collegiate and postgraduate training in the arts as well. And so you went down that path. At what point did you know you were going to do that?
It's sort of a continuum, you know.
Okay.
Like, as so many things, it's not as if the world said, we are now in the Enlightenment era, you know. But there are those little signposts along the way. And I love that you asked that. It seems like a healthy and a sweet thing to do, to look back and say, oh, that's a moment when this sort of thing started to develop. I know at the theater school, we could be in children's productions. So pretty quick, I decided I want to be in those. And then the theater school was part of the civic theater. So pretty soon it became clear to me that I could audition for adult shows and play children's roles in those. But then at one moment I was in high school, and my friend Cynthia, her mother was an opera singer. Her name's Alice Rogers, and she's quite a noted singer, certainly on the West Coast, but elsewhere also. She was talking about Helmut Rilling passed away recently and how he influenced her and how she worked with him. Anyway, so she took us to the opera, because that was quite a thing to have her recognized in the audience when... Anyway, but what was it that we saw? The very first one, maybe Don Giovanni or something like that. But I remember when I saw that, I thought, oh, those emotions were so big. The musical expression of those emotions, vocally and orchestrally and librettoily, the way the stories are constructed in opera, were so big that I thought, that's it. I want to be a music major. I thought, because that's music. And so I would say that was a point where one starts to think, oh, that's a professional path I'm going to start to want to go down. Remember, people would say, well, why aren't you a theater major? Why music? I still kind of wonder, because sometimes I would think that being a theater person, like an actor, is really more of what I am.
Do you still see yourself more that way?
That's a hard one, a little bit. Okay. Because everything I love about singing, now that I've come to realize that's truly what I love about singing, is the flow of feeling through the physical instrument. And yeah, the little valve is the voice, but it's really the whole body. And that's, in my view, that's truly an acting thing.
Okay. Now you also have formal acting training. You've had a lot of experiences that you had mentioned your studies with Wesley Dahlke. Right. I guess that is formal. Yeah. Now, just to mention for everyone, Wesley Dahlke, he was at one point the director of the Minnesota Opera, I believe, right? He was also the founder of an organization. You were also a part of the Nautilus Theater. Yeah, as a student, I was part of that. And that's still going on. I just looked him up the other day. He's passed away a long time ago, but I just looked him up the other day to see what was continuing from his work. And so he worked mostly with opera singers, as you were saying, with his professional affiliation and with whatever university. I can't say it off the top of my head. But he was primarily a person who worked with opera singers as an acting teacher. And he taught them about impulse and the body's need to allow the impulse and the brain's need to step out of the way to allow the body to have the impulse. I hope that's making sense. No, it does. It does. I wonder, would you mind, is there perhaps some way that you might be able to demonstrate, like use me as the guinea pig, if I wanted to learn in that philosophy, right? Because it seems like there's an entire philosophy to this. And I tried to research as much as I could, but I love that. None of that would substitute for being able to study with the man or that. But if I wanted to understand as an outsider in a material way, like what is that process that was so formative for you? What about those studies? Could you maybe use me as a guinea pig and demonstrate? Sure. Just because of the constraints, physically I won't have you do this stuff, but I'll make like you were. Okay, you know? Sure. And what's cool about Wesley Dahlke is that it is so obvious and so simple, and yet 100% foundational. And 100%, if you said to me, what's the thing that taught you the most, I'd probably say him. I would say in 1996 when
when I was studying with him that changed me as a human being, I would say. Anyway, one of the things he would do, he would say, okay, just put your hand right up in the air. Go ahead. Okay, cool. Now put it forward. Good. Now put it down. Cool. Now put it on your head. Great. Now put it on your heart. Great. Now put them on your hips. Great. And then he would say, now we were always going to think of that, any motion as swift and loose. So let that be a hallmark of I guess hallmark's the word I mean, of the, what the characteristic of that physical motion is. And if anyone was having trouble, I always use my water bottle in class, but he would pick up something and say, I'm just going to drop it. Now see how that is. See, that's swift and loose. I'm not assisting it. I'm not throwing it down, nor am I holding it back. I'm not restricting the motion of it falling down. So if you wanted to know, Scott, you would put your arm up in the air and then you would just let it drop. And then he would ask you to do that while you were singing a phrase. And he would continue to tell you what to do because he wouldn't want your brain to need to be planning it. Because if your brain was planning it for fear of being not interesting enough or not knowing what to do, it would hinder the swift and looseness. That's making sense so far?
Yeah, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would train someone to prevent the kind of overacting that you often find.
Overacting or what do you call that? Hindrance or restricting or holding back.
Right. Okay.
And so once you had become comfortable with him telling you what to do, so you knew what it felt like to have the impulse without cogitating it, or whatever word I'm thinking of, cognitively thinking of at first, then he would say, okay, now just do your own. And remember, you have a whole repertoire, so you never need to think of where's my hand going to go. Mm-hmm. Never have to think about that. And so the next step would be to sing that phrase while you did the motions you made up on your own. And then we'd talk about how that felt. And I remember him asking me how that felt to me, and I would say that felt as if there is a negative 100, and there is 100, and there's 0 right in the middle, and that's your scale. And then I said, I feel like I've been at a 0 in my performing all the time because I never thought I could go all the way over there or all the way over there. And then the next one, he would say, continue motions, but just let them happen whenever they want to. You don't have to do anything, and let them make sense. And that's a tricky one because when I do this with students, it's very easy for them to start to get illustrative. If, say, they're saying about driving a car, they'll steer the car and show you, and that's a little cognitive-ish. So let's see if we could steer away from illustrative, and they need to be movements that don't really make sense. You let them make sense because you say, oh, I went like that, and that's what that meant.
I see. Okay.
And maybe you can't put in words what it means,
right.
Just like people who talk with their hands.
Otherwise, it might be something that might be, shall we say, too contrived.
Too contrived, great way of putting it. And then bit by bit, one starts to learn is my body will express itself on its own, and I don't need to think about that. And meaning will come out that I didn't know I had. And maybe I can put words to, but it feels so authentic and real that I want to live there. I want to live there all my life long with anything you say, anything you do. And it's evergreen. I don't think the well of creativity ever dries up. Somehow the body has impulses that just wants to happen all the time. It's your head doing it. Mm-hmm. It's and a whole other bit with what he would teach is what it feels like to walk from place to place, how that works, to get comfortable with that, facial expressions, etc., where your eyes are looking, all these different little 0 to 100s, those scale. I hope that's making okay sense.
Absolutely.
That's basically it.
It's so interesting that you say all this because now I did not have the pleasure of ever working in a theater company or studying from someone who was so aware of those things and could convey them, because there's this beauty in studying with someone who can articulate this. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can. There are wonderful artists, but not everyone can teach it. And when we encounter someone who's a really great teacher, I can just see how emphatically you speak about it, how impactful his teaching was to you.
Good. Oh my goodness. We did a thing, I think he called it sound and motion, where, and then putting your voice with it's a whole other thing. He would just say, okay, no, let some physicality happen. Go ahead and let your legs and your arms and your body make some movement. Just let it go for maybe 5, 10, 15 seconds. And then let your voice go along with it. Maybe not words, Maybe just, like that. And so that was part of our warm up in each class was a sound emotion. We go around the circle and do it. And part of it, and this is, maybe talk a little bit later about this, part of it was that you would repeat what someone had done. If I did my sound emotion, it was kind of like a la 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 la, then everyone would repeat it back.
I see.
And then you go to the next and then the next and the next. So our class, I think it lasted only 2 weeks, but it was pretty intensive because like 6-7 hours of class or something, like kind of all day things. And so at the end, we got little certificates and we had a graduation ceremony kind of, and somehow it just happened that people did a sound in motion as they walked up to get their little diploma. I don't think it was planned. I don't think anyone said to do that, but I can't think of anything more beautiful than I ever saw. That everyone just decided to get up and do that,
right?
Because it wasn't verbal.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, this is me right now, and some observers might say, "Oh, how foolish," but others would say, "How authentic, how in the moment, and how unheld back." What a fabulous, sweet, sweet memory. And Wesley Balk, my goodness. So there you have it. That's a big one.
Wow. Yeah. That sounds so liberating to be in an environment where, and I've been fortunate enough to have moments like that, where you're in an environment you just feel uninhibited because you know that those who are participating are in it themselves, and that support kind of quashes down that voice that otherwise would tell you what a naysayer in an audience might otherwise say. Because we have that voice too, right? We all struggle with that.
You said it. Oh my God, you said it. Every second, right? And I was on my way here and I'm thinking, I better come up with something clever. And I was thinking about how you have a tape that plays in your head, and maybe it's your mom's voice, your dad's voice, or whoever's voice. It says, "Steven, should you have said that?" And I thought, I should say MP3 now, or else people will put me on.
Whose voice is on your tape?
My mom.
Your mom?
And my dad.
Okay.
My mom, I was thinking about this also, we'd go to the market. "Oh, that looks good. You don't need that. Or that's not on sale." So holy Christ, I wish I could get those out. Get those voices out. "You don't need that." It would be so sweet. But my mom, doing the best she could. It'd be so sweet if anybody was able to say, "I wish I could buy you all that, honey." Mm-hmm. But we can't. So we'll have to choose one little thing, or maybe put that aside. Maybe that's a tomorrow thing. I could see how much you love that. It looks good to me too. Wouldn't that be sweet to validate? So you're saying quash. Let's see if we can not quash. Anyway, so those are the voices in your head. Yeah. And you said it. That environment was one where we learned to see if we could step through that.
But you also touched upon something that I think is really important about that. That voice has positive aspects of it too. That same voice that in one context might be too critical in the moment when you should just let yourself do something might be that same voice that tells you, you should probably practice that again because it wasn't correct. And you don't want to go on stage sounding like a fool, because I get that all the time.
There is that. You're right. Let's just prepare way in advance. Mm-hmm. And somebody told me 36 times is the time you do something 36 times, your brain grabs it. My friend Sherry Price said that. Anyway, so you just do it again. Okay, great. Do it again. Do it again. Great. That's enough for today. Yeah. So it's true. That voice that says, let's pour some discipline on this. And so that's a thing to continue to learn.
Right. So in your formal training, let's say, I know that you are a graduate of USC.
Right. That's
and what brought you there? I mean, that's a very renowned program for all the arts. University of Southern California, we're talking about.
Right. Well, it was around the corner, so I'm like, I'll apply there. I was living in LA. I born in Portland, and then undergraduate at a little college called Lewis and Clark College, most beautiful campus in the world. That might be an overstatement, but real pretty. Mount Hood is right there, the Cascade Mountains. You ever been out west?
No, but Carol and I are avid outdoorsmen. Outdoors people? How do we call that, Carol? Carol's nodding.
Yeah, Portland, the Pacific Northwest. Oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. So a beautiful campus on a beautiful setting. Mm-hmm. That was undergraduate. And then I came to Manhattan School from 85 through 88 and did a master's in voice there. And then I guess another sweet formative moment was I had a boyfriend named Kelly, and he and I had a summer romance in the summer after I graduated from master's degree. I went home to Portland to spend the summer there because I always wanted to escape from New York. At that time, I couldn't handle it. I missed the mountains and the Douglas fir trees so much.
I could see that. I mean, New York is a really cool place, but when you can connect with nature, you can go upstate for some of it, but I suppose, selfishly bring it to my own experience. Carol and I discovered our love for hiking.
Yeah.
Our love for water sports out on lakes. I mean, there's just something so serene about having that. I could definitely see why not having that in your life for 3-4 years might make you feel a bit homesick for that.
Yeah. And I didn't know how to manage at that time the homesickness, which is a whole other topic. But anyway, so the summer I escaped, and then I met him, and what a sweet human being. And he could see what you're saying, the homesickness.
Right.
And he said, Steven, you can be anywhere you want to be. And And so I thought, okay. So I thought that, wow, that's fabulous. And so I moved back to Portland and did the singing that I could do, did the acting I could do, managed to make that like a side hustle. It's never ever been anything that could house me and feed me and clothe me 100%, but was always there as a side hustle. And then at some point, I was doing a little bit of on-camera acting because I thought I love acting. And so there was a fair amount of production in Portland, like commercials or industrial films. I don't even know if they have those anymore. Training things.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
For a big company to show employees how they had to act. Watch this and you'll know how to act. Anyway, so I did enough of those, and I don't know if the directors were trying to get a better performance out of me, but they'd say, boy, all the good ones. Oh, he's one of the good ones. And I thought, oh, I'll move to LA. So I ended up in LA, and then USC was right around the corner. And at that point, I was doing a little music directing, trying to audition for stuff, and managed to get one little thing. Anyway, my friend Jack Bannon said, what was I? Around 2003, 2004. So I was getting ready to be 40. And I must have been talking to him about how do you go through life and stuff. And he says, well, you just find what you love to do. And you find the stuff that you love to do that maybe you're just a little bit better than everybody else, or at least as good as them. And I thought, well, that's teaching. I love to teach. I'm not better than anybody as an actor or a singer. And so I applied to grad schools. And so USC was one of them. And luckily they took me in education and vocal performance. And my friend Debbie said, well, stay with vocal performance because that's your other degree. So I think continuity is going to be important as you look for a job. So I went back to school with an express idea that I would go for a full-time teaching position. And thank God both of us found our way to our full-time position.
We sure did at good old Queensborough Community College at CUNY. Shout out to QCC.
Yes.
But so you were at USC, and it was a through line. It was a degree that was also rooted in vocal training as well.
Yeah, it was a vocal performance degree, vocal arts is what it's called.
Okay.
So my degree is called DMA, Doctor of Musical Arts. I know that's what you have, and yours is saxophone, right?
Sure is.
So there's DMA in saxophone.
Well, actually, mine was technically in jazz studies.
Jazz study, okay.
Yeah, technically, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a through line. So anybody looking at me would see that I hadn't course corrected or changed or something. Mm-hmm. At one point, as I said, my friend Debbie, who similarly did all her degrees in the same thing as a choral conductor, that was her advice. And she's one of the great friends who helped me on that path of how do you make it through? How do you get hired? How do you get tenure? All that stuff. So yeah, like being at USC as a vocal arts student got me on that road. And my teacher, Gary Glaze, Metropolitan Opera tenor, sweet man. Goodness, what would you say? Most honest in that he said, well, what's your profile, Steven? What are you? You're not a Verdi baritone, not you. You're not going to get hired by a school who wants someone who's done with their opera career and now is going to teach. This is what you're not. But there is something that you are, and that's your niche. It's similar to what Jack said. And so that helped me to keep an eye out on those certain job postings. And then Queensborough is 100% my niche because it's looking for someone who's can do some choral and good with community college students because they were hoping that I would be, or whoever got that job would be someone who could reach all sorts of learners. And yeah, so that's it.
It's such a gift to come across someone who can provide the mentorship of direction. I had that too. In my case, I had that in the case of someone who never became my formal teacher. I had auditioned for someone. He's a wonderful saxophonist, very, very well known in the classical saxophone world, named Donald Cinta. He is now retired, but he taught at University of Michigan for a long time. And I auditioned for him and for his classical studio. And he said, well, I can't take you into the classical studio. You don't seem to have quite as much experience at that point. And that was okay. And he was right. I didn't have that much experience in classical saxophone at that time. But he said, I know you play jazz, and I think you really should find a teacher who does both. He said, you're going to regret if you teach, if you learn from someone who only does one of them like I do. He said, I don't do both, and this probably wouldn't be the place for you. You really have to choose a program. Find someone who does both, and you can nurture both, and you'll be happier, and you'll have better job prospects. Some of the best mentorship I ever had, and it was during an audition that I didn't even get.
Right. He had the vision to see you and look at you and then tell you something that maybe you wouldn't want to hear, but still was so potent.
And it was so helpful, right? And anytime someone can see something in us and say, I don't think that you should get rid of this, or you might want to look into this direction. It's nice because it's a little nudge. They're not telling us you must do this, because maybe that wouldn't work so well. But it's just that little nudge.
Were you ever able to tell him that he did that for you?
I was. And I was happy I was able to, because that was one of the most influential things that ever happened to me was that. And I hear a lot of those parallels in what you're telling me with your, this was Gary Glaze.
Gary Glaze, yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. But that's the mark of a true teacher.
Oh my gosh. And he said, Steven, you have something to say as a singer.
Mm-hmm. Well, look, I know your reputation as a teacher is one who is, and please understand, I'm not blowing smoke in your face, because I know this is every bit the truth, but you are a compassionate teacher. Your students thrive under your teaching. I hear your vocal juries from semester to semester on a regular basis, and I hear the kind of progress you make with students who oftentimes had no formal training prior to working with you. Tell me about how you see teaching in your professional life. Where does that fit in that hierarchy of who you see yourself as a creative person today?
Wow, that's tough. I would say number one.
Okay.
But now that I'm doing a little bit more performing than I was before, I love that so much. They're so linked, but probably teaching would be the number one thing I love to do, because it just feels so good to say, I have an idea of some things that feel so good, and here are some ways that I think you might find it for yourself physically. And now how does that feel? What does that mean? And then now, how would you explain that to someone else? Pretend I was taken to jail. I always say, pretend I ended up in jail. Someone walked in and said, what are you doing? How would you explain that to someone else? I love
that's an interesting fallback for a scenario.
When I'm in jail. It's so much to me. It seems like it's all about, now how would you tell that to someone else? See if you can find some words for that. And that's a very hard thing for young people to do, students to do that. It's very hard.
Right.
Goodness, if you said, what do I love to teach the most? Even though it's the scariest and I think the hardest, private voice is probably the thing I love the most, because of how hands-on, intimate like it is around how do I understand physical impulse and let it happen.
Right.
And then with singing, it is letting go, because you're letting go breath, of course. But then, as you know, with your embouchure, aperture, all of those things, that there is resistance. And so you have to manage that resistance. Oh, that's a little similar to that voice in your head you're talking about, that it has its uses.
Sure.
You let that flow happen, and you manage the resistance of it. So there is that, oh my gosh, what do you call it? Sweet spot or payoff or potency that comes from what that resistance feels like when it gives you a big payoff. I always say, find the sweet spot of the tennis racket,
That's a good analogy, yeah.
Yeah, because look at that effort you're giving, and yet look at that payoff, which is more than what you think that effort would give. And that pays dividends, and that, as you say it, or as I was saying, a deep well that always will just give you more and more, and you will just go and go. And I think that's what life is about. And I know teaching feels that way, because every lesson I think I can't do this, or every semester I think I can't do this, I'm too tired. But then when you meet with the students, then it just goes. And it's like, that felt so good, I want to do it again and again.
Right. Wow. What advice would you have for someone who has not engaged in singing in any formalized way, but wants to go for it? They want to learn it, whatever age level they're at, whatever experience, but they don't have any formal experience. I feel like it can be a daunting task even more so than for instruments, because at least from my perspective, there's this psychological barrier that we can keep by having an instrument. I know I have that. On stage, I have a saxophone in my hands, and I'm very comfortable on stage.
Yeah, well, yes.
But I wasn't always, and I was very introverted as a child.
Okay.
But when I had a saxophone in my hands, or a violin, because violin was my first instrument, that it was like this wall between me and an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I could use that. I feel like my ego could hide a little bit behind the instrument, that physical structure. You don't have any of that with voice. It's all you.
I guess so.
It's all you, you know. What advice would you have for someone who has not done this and wants to start learning vocal arts?
Wow, boy, there's a lot of advice that you could give.
Sure.
See if we can't just physically understand what that flow feels like and divorce it a little bit from sound and expectations of sound. I know you like this artist over here, and you probably want to sound like that, but we're going to have to see if we could transcend that and make yourself feel like you physically, and then a sound will come out. That will be you, and maybe you'll be giving some of the stuff that you liked from that other guy or that other woman. So that's a big one. Big one. I wish I'd known that a little earlier. When I was a student, all the time I was trying to sound like somebody else. That screwed me up big time. Anyway, so that psychological or physiological foundation, I would say, was super, super important. And then get into a group where you're singing, and you can be with people and do it together so it feels safe and supported because you're not alone and you're not spotlighted and all naked like what you were saying a little bit. And then see if there can be someone who can guide you a little bit, like your choral teacher or a class voice teacher, or whenever the time comes, a friend or a private teacher who you just make sure they're keeping an eye on that you feel authentically like yourself, with the swift and loose thing that Wesley Balk talks about, and then the healthy resistance thing that vocal technicians will tell you about.
Right. No, I think that's wonderful advice. It's so common that people want to emulate what they find to be deep and enjoyable.
Yeah.
But, you know, the vocal mechanism is one that, you know, if I'm playing a saxophone, I can change my reed, I can change my mouthpiece, I can essentially reinvent everything about my timbre and tone. And you don't think about that kind of inherent flexibility that an instrument has. And then to learn how to do that on voice when you can't see any of it.
Can't see it.
I don't know if it would even help if you could, though. I mean, maybe sometimes it's nice to know how the mechanism works, but that connection between ear and feel.
I think visual is cool. When you see things, that it helps you understand it in a different way than before, especially how tiny the vocal folds are. The little area of them that vibrates when you're singing rather than the whole thickness when you're talking is a whole different thing to get out from under. It's a funny thing when the voice ages because the cartilage starts to turn into bone, and there's that whole thing. What I was kind of connecting with when you were talking was about the bit about emulating. That's a tricky thing about studying opera, is that I want to sound like Cheryl Milnes, or I want to sound like Luciano Pavarotti. You better beware if you want to sound like Cheryl Milnes, because he's got a heavy mechanism when he sings.
Oh, sure.
He approaches every note from under, and sometimes it takes him quite a while to get to the pitch. God love him. Is he still alive? I feel awful if he is, because he's a great singer, and I wanted to be him. Fabulous singer. But if you try to sound like, if you do things with your voice that you think will end up sounding like that, many people will get into big trouble. So it's like, gosh, I wish opera could be more about like, forget all that stuff. And the opera is also a thing like, oh, you are a Verdi baritone. You are a Mozart baritone. That is your Fach, the whole notion that word in German meaning whatever it means. It just means that's your category. And that people are Zwischenfach, like in between Fachs. And so that's what I figured out I kind of was. I'm not really a baritone in the Verdi way. I'm not a tenor. I can't sit up that high for that long. Right in between. French people call that a baritone Martin.
Oh, really?
Whatever that is. So that's somewhere in between. The students would be like, oh, that's not a voice who could do that. Oh, you're not this kind of singer. You know, so that's very rough.
Wow. That's
part of what I wanted to get out of.
It's very an unceremonious way of shoving people into a category.
Sure thing. And less thanning a whole bunch of people, because I'm not that at all. Not at all. I always say I saw these corn-fed Iowa baritones. It's like, what were you fed on?
Corn-fed Iowa baritones.
And they'd be like 6 foot, 100. And out would come this huge thing. And I thought, I want to be like that. Anyway, so to learn to get out from behind that, and so this is back to Gary Glaze, like that's not you. Figure out what you are. That's rough in opera because they're like, what are there, 5 categories? We got soprano, mezzo-soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, bass, 6.
Right.
For all humanity. Like, oh, right, okay. That's exclusive. But opera's a fabulous thing. Oh, well, there you have it. It's a big thing to get out from under.
You're a wellspring of knowledge. I love it.
Oh my gosh, that is very sweet of you.
You are. You'll correct me on the timeline of this, but you at one point had worked with the Meisner repetition.
Right.
And you had first turned me on to that because I was not aware of it as a non-actor.
Right.
But it sounds like something that I think many people would benefit from. Would you describe for me what you learned from that and what that is?
Yeah.
Meisner repetition.
Sanford Meisner, the great Sanford Meisner. And there's a person who, in the simplest of terms, said, here's life. Kind of like Wesley Balk says, physically, here's life. You just release, swift and loose. Sanford Meisner, what did he teach at Neighborhood Playhouse or something like that? Anyway, the repetition technique, he just said, what we got to learn to do is see and say. I see what you're doing. So if we were doing the repetition exercise and you were nodding, I would say, you're nodding. And then Meisner would say, okay, another part of this is we're going to learn how to not plan and not being in our heads so we don't start to get cognitively like that whole thing we were talking about earlier. So you need to repeat what someone else says at least once so you can get out of the mode of, I'm repeating myself, and that's my worst thing, get out of the mode of coming up with something clever because that'll kill a performance. And you and I, we were talking, you said, Steven, you're funny sometimes. And I said, it's going to dry up the minute I get in front of a mic because I'll try to plan things that are funny and that'll kill it. Anyway.
Now, I do want to clarify though, because I think that is a misquote because that sounds slightly passive aggressive toward you.
Uh-oh.
You're funny sometimes. No. You are a funny guy. I mean, you are funny sometimes, but the rest of the time you're hilarious. So I just want to clarify that.
And I quoted you as saying you're funny.
That sounded very Jessica Walter of you to quote, like, you're funny sometimes.
Interesting.
Just in case. I wanted everyone to know that I have no reservations about your comedy.
That's great. That's great. Oh, holy crap. I tell you, practically every day of my life, I think the well just dried up. There's no more jokes left. And there's one year when I thought, this is it. It's gone.
Yeah.
And then something came back, something came up. It's funny. Anyway, repeat because you want to make sure that you're not planning. Okay. So if I said to you, you are nodding, then you would say, I'm nodding. You're nodding. I'm nodding. And then if I noticed a sensation I was having, then I would say, you're making me scared, or I feel scared. Okay. And then you would say, you feel scared, and back and forth like that. And then if you felt something, if you saw that I did something, or you felt that you were doing something or feeling something, you would just say it. And I think part of the very cool thing about this is when Sanford Meisner says, say it from your point of view, because the repetition is there in that you're not having to plan and think, but then also the validation is there where that you're nodding. I saw that you were nodding. And so you know that I saw. And then it starts to put you in a place where I have sensations, I have feelings, and they are known. They are validated and they're seen. And so you start to become more comfortable with your sensations and your feelings. And because part of the exercise is that you say what you're feeling and what you notice, you become comfortable with saying it. And I think that's why I said this is life. It seems to me that we're here to notice what other people are feeling and to let them know that you're noticing it. And we are here to notice what we are feeling and be okay with saying it.
Right.
And so when I started to do that exercise, and you were talking about the timeline, somewhere in the 90s when in Portland, I was interested in continuing my acting. So I went into some classes and
were these classes in the repetition exercises, or was it with Sanford Meisner himself?
That would be something. No, it was not with Sanford Meisner. It was just a person who learned from him or was interested by him. I don't think there was that close a degree of separation.
I see. Okay.
But I'm not sure. It might have been someone who actually studied with him. Anyway, so at that point, gosh, it's like your eyes are opened. I would go to the bank back in the day when you go to the teller, and I would think, normally I would not say, you're annoying me. You're nodding at me, because you don't say that stuff. In life, you're told, and the teacher call that the armor of conventionality. We wear that armor because we do not say stuff.
Wow, what a great way to describe that.
Right.
The armor of conventionality.
Right. Huh. And so I do not go around saying, you're annoying me. You're talking over me. These are not things I'm saying to you. Anyway,
I'm sorry.
No. You don't go through life doing that, but at the same time you say, no, these are impulses that when the time comes to perform, then you let those out.
Yeah.
So I hope that makes sense, the simplicity of that exercise.
No, it does. Well, I looked up some of this. I looked up there was a clip of Sanford Meisner himself. And now just for context, this really floored me. I mean, he was unfortunately, he was unwell physically for a long time, but he was still conducting his classes.
Yeah.
And it seemed like everyone was having such a good time. And there was a lot of this, I'm well, how are you? I'm well, how are you? I'm well, how are you? Just this kind of back and forth. It almost made me think of, it was like a scene in Annie Hall, where I forget the main female role in that movie, Annie Hall, who that was.
Well, Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton, right.
Yeah.
Where it was just kind of this repetition of like the la-di-da thing that she always said, that little kind of like her character's verbal tick that she would say whenever something unsatisfying occurred. And it made me think of that. And I saw this laundry list of major actors who either worked with Meisner or, I mean, it was Jack Nicholson, Robert De Niro, Tom Cruise, Tina Fey. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense to me. And then it made me think of the opportunity that many non-actor creative types are missing out by not exploring this, because it seemed incredibly interesting to me. And I can see the intense value of even just philosophically looking at something like the Meisner technique and seeing how can I apply that when I'm on stage? How can I make sure to be present and any emotions while I'm playing are just natural and I'm not looking to impress or feel like I have to move in a certain way to try to prove that I'm in the moment, because musicians do that. We're actually notorious for moving a lot, sometimes in these maybe odd ways, don't seem to go with the music in an effort to you know, I tend to actually move less in recent years. I don't move that much. I try to keep everything in my head, but maybe something like that might be a nice way of finding a middle ground to really be as natural as you can on stage. So I thank you for turning me on to that, because I'm late to the game, because this is obviously a very famous philosophy, but it's
from the 1930s, right? Didn't he start way back?
He started, I don't know exactly when, but he built that over a long period of time. So it seemed fascinating though.
Gosh, I hesitate to be like this, but you probably see that I am influenced by him the way I go about my professional life.
Yes, absolutely. No, you carry yourself in a very assured way that I think is also comforting to others, to be around someone who seems very genuine. I see that you are very genuine in the way you speak and carry yourself. But that's a very grounding thing. It's certainly grounding for students as well, to be around someone who can be so sincere around them. I think that's one of the reasons why students gravitate to you the way they do.
Thank you. I think a lot of it, the piece that I would want to emphasize is the bit about, I see you. I see what you did. Mm-hmm. You nodded. Tell me more, you know. How does that feel to you? How would you explain that to somebody? Sometimes you have to.
I understand that you're demonstrating, but I also am fighting the compulsion to give you answers to what you just said.
Because it feels so good. That's what if you're watching videos, it feels so good. And time goes by so because you're in a flow.
Right.
Well, whoever that guy is, I swear his name looks like one of those eye charts. Who is that? You know, where there's a Z and a Q and an L. Mm-hmm. There's that philosopher who talked about the flow state. I wish I could say his name.
Oh, I know the philosophy. I don't know the philosopher's name.
Yeah, let's just throw letters up the wall and say that's who it is, which is not respectful, because it's a great name and it's his own name. But it's about you want to be in a flow. You want to be just challenged, not bored, and when people are looking at you and observing you and you're observing them, that's a flow state, I would say. Correct
me if you see this differently, but I see this, one of these through lines in these experiences that you had that you're discussing with me is that, so I know you as a musician. That's how I've always known you. Yeah. I didn't know how deep your acting training and how you see yourself in a theatrical way, but it makes sense in the way that you perform. It makes sense in the way that you teach. And there's this synergy between those sides.
Do you like going to the theater? I feel like we may have talked about this at one point.
Actually, I reignited my love for theater, and a lot of this is through my better half, Carol, who's off camera. We've been seeing a lot more theater in the past few months, I'd say.
I'm having the
that was
slightest
more
deja
than I had seen in a while, but I really enjoy it.
Is there something that stands out to you? A show that
We saw Book of Mormon, and it floored. I mean, first of all, I couldn't catch my breath.
I'm such a lucky doctor. I haven't never gone, but go ahead.
It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, and also just the immense talent among the cast.
Mm-hmm.
To find a cast that it's a relatively small ensemble.
Yeah.
But everyone was a powerhouse of a singer.
Yeah.
Everyone was a great dancer.
Yeah.
Like virtuosically so.
Yeah.
And did not seem like there was anyone who was carrying. It was just everybody was there. And that was just beautiful to see. And you could see how much work they put into it. And it was, thank God, a full live band. So thank you so much. Shout out to Local 802 Union, because there is a different experience, because I've seen shows that are partially recorded. I don't blame, the people who are in the production. I know there's a lot of politics and forces behind that. But when you know that, and I know because you're a music director, I was going to ask you about that next, that when you're directing something in that way, the actors on stage, they can do everything more naturally, because when you're working to a click that you know is unshakable, and we know that life is not working to a tempo click, you have to be able to sway a little bit. It's like a building that's not prepared for earthquakes and it's in the middle of LA. It will not survive. And musically, you can see the difference.
Right. Oh, yeah.
It makes it seem, from my perspective, I saw a show that was that had a only partially live band, and you can see the difference. By no means were the actors and the dancers and everyone, they were fantastic, but you could see from a musician's perspective the tension in trying to catch it, and then thinking about what you do as a director, and there's that constant communication with stage, which is what I wanted to ask you about.
My husband, Christopher, is one of the people who's taught me the most in life, because he always says to me, Steven, just tell your story. Because when I'm maybe struggling with my singing or whatever as a performer.
Now, Christopher runs, let's give a shout out to
Jazz Hands Children's Theater.
Yes, that's a beautiful project.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah, that's a whole fabulous.
And what is the name of that?
Jazz Hands
Children's Theater.
Yeah, we're in Glen Cove. That's where we have our performance and rehearsal space. But there's a little area around there, Oyster Bay area, with Seacliff, Glen Head, little hamlets or whatever like that, where we draw all our students from. And the idea of just telling your story. And that's what they're doing when you go to a show. And it is live. And you see the actors responding to one another, and you see the audience responding. And it's, as you said, synergistic. It is such a confluence of seeing and noticing and doing that it just makes life good. We went and saw, what was it the other day? 2 suitcases or something, 2 people carrying a cake across New York. And right before the show started, we sat down and ladies next to us just happened to start talking to us. And they said, oh yeah, we come up to New York from Atlanta and we see this show and that show. Oh, did you see? Yes, I saw that. And then I said, oh, did you see Illinois? And then the woman in front of us turned around. I saw that. And so we even though those experiences were in the past, we were able to talk as if it were happening right now about the feelings that we got from seeing what happened on that stage. And Illinois needs a shout out like nobody's missed us. That's the album. I wish I could name the songwriter who did the album. The show is based on that, told 100% through dance. The most expressive, the most expressive movements that Wesley Balk would say, let that make sense. Suddenly that made the greatest sense. Anyway, story told through dance, singers were above, and they were expressive in their own right, telling the story. And it was one of those shows, the instant the music began and the instant the storytelling through dance began, one of those big tears came down. And I thought, oh, Steven, don't you love it when you have a feeling like that in the theater? It's great. I love it. It's worth the price of admission. But then another big tear and another, and it never, ever stopped during the entire show. I can't tell you. And the man next to me, he was feeling that music, and I thought he is. And then after the show, Christopher and I went. It was one of those times I've never had that after the theater where I just had to dissolve into tears, and he had to just hold me while I cried. It was the best feeling ever. from that show. And so those people right there in front of us were able to feel that.
Yeah.
So that's what theater is all about. So I recommend it to everyone. But that was a big tangent because you were talking about music directing, and so I suppose
That's not a tangent at all. It's beautiful. No,
sweet.
this is what it's about, though. Because we have these passions in us, and they evolve with us.
Yeah.
And then we become professionals, but then sometimes even professionals can get jaded about that because then they see themselves in a particular light, and then to have another related experience, to have another awe-inspiring moment, to have transcendence. Sometimes it just takes us and it reminds us, okay, there's still a lot to be learned, a lot to be had. So I love it that you recounted it. Thank you for sharing it.
And again, it's evergreen.
Yeah.
There's always more feelings there. Even if you think you've lost all your punchlines, God forbid, I shouldn't say because it's going to go away. Another one will show up. And so you're talking about music directing and what it's like to have that connection.
Yes.
With the orchestra, with the singers. Yeah. It's very, very similar because you are seeing. And my friend Debbie, God bless her, I love her so much. She's alive and well also. I always talk about people with such, like you'd think they had died, but I love her. She would just say, just watch the lips. And you just watch the singer's lips. They may not even breathe in a way that anybody would know that they had breathed, but you see it. And then you're able to just go along. Your gesture can match with that. And so Sanford Meisner would probably love that. And then it lives. And in that special moment when a verse turns into a chorus, a special moment when the band drops out and then the singers are in charge, and then you just go when you're ready, when they tell you they're ready because of their lips. All of that. But that's maybe one of I love conducting. Oh my goodness. That's the best. And it was the theater where I cut my teeth, or whatever you call it, on conducting.
Yes, please.
The Coeur d'Alene Summer Theater in North Idaho, and that's where I met my husband. Coeur d'Alene is a little resort town right on a beautiful lake, North Idaho. Real beautiful there. My friend Susanna, great actress. Her name is Susanna Mars, and just because it's interesting to me, not to name drop, but her dad is that great actor, Kenneth Mars. And his name may not tell you exactly who he is, but he's like Ariel's dad in Little Mermaid.
Oh, okay.
And all the Mel Brooks. He's like the crazy guy with the fake arm in Young Frankenstein.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
So funny.
Wow.
So close and yet so far. Because he is an actor, and he was an actor. He's passed away in a rarefied world. And yet her daughter, my beloved friend, a regular human being, I could connect with her. And then there's her dad, Anyway, she was the person who I saw on her whiteboard that she's going to go do Evita at Coeur d'Alene Summer Theater. And I thought, oh, Susanna, I better do what you're doing. I'll send them a video. So I got out my VHS tape of my performing, and I sent it in. And the guy said, okay, you can come here and be an actor in our choruses. And so that was great. I went and was in the chorus of Evita and what do you call that? How to Succeed in Business. I was a featured part in that. Sort of my acting life. I'm not a leading man, so I'm someone who'll do a little feature or a secondary something. So I did that, and then, gosh, I guess someone must have known I was a voice teacher, and they said, "Oh, would you warm up the cast?" And so I warmed up the cast, and the director said, "Oh, yeah, I like the way you do that. Would you like to music direct for me?" So in Portland, he had me music direct Chess the following year, which is a great show, Chess. And I have enough keyboard skills that I was able to be marketable and that I could conduct from the keyboard for any productions, community theater, or the like, where you can't afford the kind of orchestra where there would be someone with a stick,
You're a very good accompanist, though, because I've seen the classical works that you accompany when your students are performing opera pieces. I mean, those are not easy reductions, because those are mostly reductions, and that's the hardest thing from what I've heard to really to accompany. I speak from someone who's still trying to learn how to play one note at a time.
Well, one note at a time is never a bad idea.
Never a bad idea.
Yeah, I'm good at leaving things out, That's real. And somehow, back in the day, we'd go to church. I'd listen to my mom harmonizing when we'd sing the hymns, and she was a great octave jumper, so that probably taught me a lot. She'd be, la, la, the Lord will tell you to go to the... She'd jump down the octave when she couldn't manage it anymore. She enjoyed singing alto, because after 4 or 5 verses, you got to do something. And so she would jump to another part. And anyway, so that gave me a good experience of music making. I played piano a lot, so the hymnal was at home, so I'd sit and play that. I know how they went, So I could read and predict enough because I know how it went. So it wasn't like if you're saying figure one note at a time, it could be so daunting. Anyway, so I knew my way around the keyboard enough to get through. And so that's how music directing started. And then one summer, it was 1999, which I guess was my fourth summer at the Summer Theater. I went there every year for 18 years and met the best people. I always talk about my friend Jack. Anyway, Roger Welch, the guy who ran the theater, artistic director, said, "Have you ever conducted an orchestra?" Yes. Because yes is always a good answer until they find out that you haven't. But anyway, I was able to figure that.
That pushes you to learn things, though, right? I've had those moments like, sure, I can figure that out, and let's get a book on this and figure it out and watch videos. And
luckily, yes, and luckily I'd studied conducting in undergraduate. Interestingly, it fascinated me so much then. Mm-hmm. And it was the choral teacher who was the conducting teacher, and he would show us what worked. One time our choir at Lewis and Clark was singing with the Portland Youth Philharmonic. And the conductor, whatever they were doing, he was saying, "See how much trouble he's having showing that offbeat. See how they don't quite know what they're doing there." And he taught about, real fast rebound. People will come in just after, and that'll be your offbeat.
That's such an art. That's such an art because for those who do not conduct, now I would not consider myself a great conductor. I'm very confident in my directing abilities in jazz improvisational music, but you don't really conduct like that because musically speaking, the drummer is in charge.
Right.
And so you have to prep the drummer to know where the cues are and all that. But physically conducting, for those who haven't done it, you have to be slightly ahead.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is so hard to not start following the sounds that you hear.
Right.
And it's such an art to say, I'm going to stick with this because you have to be the unshakable beat so everyone else will follow you.
Right.
And if you're working with strings, even harder, right? And voices too, because there's not that, you see a saxophone or a trumpet, you get that immediate sound.
Sure.
You don't get that with strings.
Nope.
You don't get that with voice.
Nope.
And you still have to know where your ictus, right? The line where everything is. And when you hit that trampoline that is where the beat is, you have to know where you are and not follow them.
It is. You said a mouthful.
It's tough. It's tough.
Strings love to rhapsodize. They'll take their time. It's like, nope, sorry, that ain't the way it's going. So yeah, you're right. You just have to be ever so slightly a little ahead of them. Mm-hmm. And so I jumped in and conducted Joseph, which is a show, luckily, just start and stop, pretty much that show.
This is the Dreamcoat?
Yes. Joseph and the American, whatever you call that. Not American. Technicolor
Dreamcoat.
That's a Dick Cavett, not Dick Cavett. Who is that guy? Dick Clark.
Dick Clark.
That's a callback for that. Anyway, earlier we're talking about American Bandstand. So he was like, "Do you know how to conduct?" Sure. So I got in there, and luckily, with the little experience I had, I was able to do it. But I sure thought I was grand. I brought tails along. I brought a different outfit for every performance, and I soon thought that's pretty dumb. So you can get out of that real quick. And but there's other really pieces of real good advice that it's worth talking about. My friend Bill Wells, we were doing Forever Plaid just after Joseph. So I was a singer in that, and he was music director. So he was around where we were still performing Joseph. That summer theater was cool because in those days, you'd rehearse for 10 days. I guess you'd start rehearsing on a Monday, and then not that Thursday, but the following Thursday, you would open. Mm-hmm. And then the following Monday, you start to rehearse another show, whereas the one show still had another week of performances. So anyway, he saw me conduct Joseph, and he's like, "Steven, you work too hard." I'm like, "Okay, then, Bill. You started them, then they know the beat. You don't have to show them every single beat." It's like, "Okay, I got that." And then hearing from Gil Seeley, the great choral teacher from Lewis and Clark, who was talking about, that beat's unimportant. There's nothing happening there. You don't need to show a big beat. Nothing's happening there. That, and then my friend Carolyn Jess, who has played keyboard in a lot of pits, she's like, "Steven, if you want to go faster, then to go faster, get smaller." Many conductors, when the field with the orchestra's dragging, they'll get bigger and more insistent and have the opposite effect. So it's so funny. You have to be counterintuitive and, as you say, be right ahead and then just get smaller. It's like magic.
It's so funny that you mentioned that. Military band conductors do that all the time, and they do it so well. The trio sections of those large marches, like, for example, so the part of a march that's more of like the softer, more melodic, da-da-da, right? So that's what they call the trio, right? And these were pieces that historically went back to the big top circuses. They used to play this as circus music, and so this was like this the music when nothing bad is going on, But you'll see that when they conduct, they start doing these beautiful hand and arm formations, but they're not conducting beats anymore. And the band just keeps going and going and going. And some people might say, oh, well, it's, everyone in the band is a powerhouse musician. And that may be true, but no matter who you have in a group, it's equally difficult for 30, 40, 50 people to think like one person. But you're establishing this air of confidence for the rest of the group so they can do that. If the director isn't doing that, it can't happen. But it's a beautiful thing.
Fascinating, beautiful, give and take. Because a lot of times in a show, when I'm giving a cue for a new tempo or something like that, I'll see how the band interpreted it and then ever so slightly adjust sometimes. Because if you just go forward with what you want, then they'll get a little train wrecky. And same with the singers. Infinitesimal, the tiniest little adjustment, so you be with them because it's like it's a collaboration, and all that stuff is so fascinating. I could go on and on and on. And so going back and doing Hello Dolly, I went away from that theater for many years. Let's see, I worked there from 96 through 2013. And then the
long run with them.
Long run, every single year. And I did every show. It was the best. A number of them twice. Got to conduct Ragtime, got to conduct Les Mis, got to conduct, what else? King and I, Fiddler. And Fiddler is one I went into, oh, darn it, who wants a war horse? I am bored, I don't want to do it. But the director, his name is Gary John LaRosa, came in, and he's a specialist in Fiddler. He'll go around the country. They're directors like that. They'll go around the country and just do that show.
Oh, they have like their show they do. I didn't know that.
He does others, but that's one of his specialties because he was in a touring production or something, which was the direct line from Jerome Robbins, the original choreographer.
I see.
And so he knew, as if it was an apostolic priestly succession, exactly what was meant to happen in that show. So he came in and directed it. He was a taskmaster, very rough. Maybe it could have been more gentle, but boy, did he create a product. And now I love that show as if it was a friend. And it was very cool to have a bunch of conducting chops that had grown over those years, because I'm always thinking about it. Even if the work is on an amateur level, like with the Children's Theater.
I see when you were directing how you are constantly teaching, because we have these young performers that are learning how to do this.
Right.
And you make it fun.
Oh.
And you have this big smile on your face, which I know is very sincere, but they're learning at the same time, and they're learning in a very safe environment. I think it's a beautiful thing. It really is. That's a great theater, and you do some challenging repertoire too. Those are not easy shows for anyone.
No, we got Spring Awakening for the 8-year-olds.
Oh, really?
I'm totally kidding. It's a little bit toned down. The teen pregnancy.
You get me every 5 seconds because it's like you slightly deadpan it, and then I'm like, oh,
slightly. Oh yeah, that's a whole other thing. In your time when you came and did Guys and Dolls, we may have had 2 casts. Maybe it was still 1, but now it's grown enough so we have 3 different casts. So each show has a Monday cast, a Wednesday class, and a Tuesday class. And it's a cast, so we do 3 different days of performances.
All the skill sets that you've accrued in these, in some cases, seemingly different areas, they're not so different.
Not really.
I mean, you mentioned, going all the way back to the Balkan, Meisner, and all of this. I see so clearly how all of those inform the other aspects of your art.
Yeah, truly. If someone said, what's the word? Observe. That would be the one word if someone said, what is it? And I'm making like I'm preaching now. And when it gets preachy, it's because I think something that someone else said is so clever. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes we should be forgiven for those moments. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Sometimes an idea will be less effective if we can't find the right words to express it, right? The idea is there, and we're just trying. It's always a refraction of whatever's in our mind. But if someone captures that, they bottle it. Why not? Fine. Kudos to that person. We always give props. Why not?
I learned that from such
Sometimes
and such.
cliches are cliches for a reason, aren't they?
Thank you for letting me talk about that.
No, I'm so happy to hear you talk about all this, because what I'm interested in is not only the trajectory of your career, but how you see it, how you see the trajectory of your career, and how that's affected the way you see yourself. What I would like to ask you is, and this is a question I've been asking of all of my guests so far, and advice that you would have for people who are currently, they have a passion in a creative art, and they want to take that passion, they may be thinking about a career in that passion. what advice would you give for them moving forward?
That is such a difficult and important thing. I guess what jumps into my head right away is the idea of a door opening. And when you go through an open door, there'll be 3 or 4 other ones, and pretty soon you'll find yourself somewhere which you wouldn't know. So for me, if you were saying, what is it? For me, right, that Gilbert and Sullivan door, I opened it, went through, and then it'll lead me other places. So someone who's just starting, find a place where you can do, I'm totally repeating what other people have said to me, but find a place where you can do the thing you do. And then chill out and have fun, because pretty soon another door will open, and you don't have to be at square 1, square 40 or whatever now, because that's down the road. And such a difficult thing to say, because you tell us we have to put food on our table. So any money you can make out of that, great. See if you can find some sort of ancillary or whatever word that is, thing that you can do that's related, that will keep feeding you. And so thank goodness I really enjoyed being a teacher from right at the very beginning somehow. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Steven, it's always a great pleasure to speak to you. We sometimes few and far between, because of our schedules seem to be at opposite ends of the week most times, at least in recent semesters. But it's always great when we get to connect. But this has been such an absolute pleasure to sit down and be able to speak to you in depth about all this. Really an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I believe you. The reason
I'm glad you believe me. I didn't make it up.
You didn't, and I'm learning to believe you. So often people will say, "Oh, I love talking to you," and you think, "Oh, he doesn't mean that."
You're making me think of the Kids in the Hall, that Canadian comedy group, the recurring character who's always sarcastic but doesn't mean to be.
Oh,
he keeps losing his friends. I forget which of them played him, but he always sounded sarcastic, but he never meant to be. It's like he had some kind of disease that made him sound sarcastic all the time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but I meant it. I meant every word.
You're teaching me that.
Yeah.
Very often one will think if a person's complimentary, they're just, as you say, blowing smoke. And that's a hard thing as a human or an American or whatever it is, to learn to just say, no, I think he means that, and just learn to just say thank you. That's a hard one. And the time, I think, went by in a sweet way.
I think so too. Look, and I greatly appreciate that you are willing to talk about your experiences with the depth that you did. And I learned quite a lot. And I have a lot of food for thought, especially that Meisner repetition was something that really spoke to me. I'm going to be looking at that.
And we can both realize that as we work our way through tenure and promotion, we got to a degree publish things. Mm-hmm. So luckily, I thought to myself, how do I use Meisner in my choral teaching?
Oh, interesting.
So I wrote an article about that, and thankfully someone said, oh, that's interesting to me.
That sounds very interesting. Yeah, forward that to me. I want to see that.
Okay, what was it? Choral Journal, February 2020. I'll see if I remember. I got a hard copy at home. Yeah.
That sounds great. Meisner as it applies to choral teaching.
Sure, like maybe the alto sang a line, tenors, let them know that you heard that. Sing their line back to them.
Yeah. Thank you again so much, Steven.
You are welcome.
Steven Dahlke, you are a fantastic teacher, a great colleague. And I should mention, when I first started at Queensborough in 2015, you were assigned, whether you had wanted to or not, because you were just assigned as my faculty mentor, my colleague mentor. We were provided, which is a great policy that they have at Queensborough, that new faculty members were assigned another faculty member to kind of show them the ropes. But I feel like you never stopped being that.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for hanging on for that long. But you're a great force over there, and it's wonderful to have you as a colleague. And thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. You're wonderful to have as a colleague also, because of you, who you are when you are being you.
Thank you, Steven. I'll try to be myself more often.
Keep it going, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of Us Creative Types. Us Creative Types, the podcast, is hosted by Scott Littroff and is produced, directed, and edited by Carol and Scott Littroff. Music by Scott Littroff. Artwork by Carol Littroff. And a very special thanks to our guest. Us Creative Types is available on YouTube and on all major podcast platforms. Follow, subscribe, like, and connect with us on social media. New episodes are published weekly. Until next time, stay curious and stay creative.